Alright guys, today we're going to talk about two of my very favorite rifles that I own from opposite sides of the world. And I've been shooting both of these guns a lot lately here on the channel, so I figured why not beat this dead horse one more time before I put these guns up once and for all for the inevitable zombie apocalypse. Plus, they're very similar, and these are both very prominent rifles in combat all over the world, or at least a variation of each. So I thought it made sense to give these two guns a proper comparison. Alright, so first we have America's rifle, the AR-15. I actually just ordered a short-barreled AR, but I haven't got it yet. So once again, we're using trusty Dusty, the old BCM. This is a workhorse of an AR-15, just a really great gun. And we're comparing it to Russia's rifle, the AK-74. This is another one you guys have seen a lot. This is the Arsenal SLR 104, and this gun is about as reliable as any rifle I've ever owned. All right, so I'm not going to really go into too much history or drop a bunch of knowledge on these guns. If you want knowledge on the AK, I would suggest you go watch Brandon Herrera, because he's an AK wizard and he knows a lot more about these guns than I do. And there's a ton of good channels for videos on the AR-15 and stuff. But the AK-74 was designed in the early 70s, obviously, and from what I've heard, they kind of took inspiration from the United States and the M16 at the time. So the 5.45 is obviously a smaller caliber than the 7.62 by 39, and again, they wanted a 22 caliber bullet for reaching out further and lighter weight ammo to be able to carry a lot more of it on you. Plus, the ballistics of the 5.45 are super impressive. I don't know if it was intentional, but you get some really crazy tumbling effects in ballistics gel, and it earned the nickname the poison bullet when it was used in combat because it was creating such gnarly wound cavities in the enemy. And that's honestly what was so appealing to me about the 5.45, because even though that surplus corrosive ammo is not really around like it used to be, just regular green box Wolf, like what I have in this magazine right here, is really impressive. And it used to be super cheap and you could find it easily. Now, not so much. It's kind of hard to find. But if it comes back, it's just a really cheap round, and the regular green box Wolf performs better than any 5.56 I've ever tested. Now, I know there's a lot of 5.56 I haven't tested, and you know, some AR ammo that does compare to the 5.45, but for cheap steel cased, you know, Russian ammo, it does give really impressive results, that's for sure. So the AK design, and this goes for the 5.45 and the 7.62 guns, is pretty much genius for its time, if you ask me. So I don't really want to take this gun apart, but I will go ahead and take the dust cover off here, take the recoil spring out here so I can show you guys how this thing works. I'm sure most of you already know, but for those of you that don't, the AKs are a long stroke gas piston system. So the bolt carrier group rides along the top of the barrel, and you can see this long piston right here is actually pretty dirty. If it'll focus on that, which I don't think it's going to, cover up my face here, but you can see that thing is covered in carbon, definitely dirty and needs cleaned. But the bolt, which is actually the moving parts, is completely clean and still even has oil on it. And I have not cleaned this gun in who knows how long. It's been way too long. So that's kind of the genius design of the AK, and that's why they've earned the reputation for being so reliable and being able to go years without cleaning or lubrication. Now, most people say that's BS and you should definitely clean and lubricate the guns, and I agree, but like I said, I haven't cleaned this gun in I don't know how long. It's been at least a couple years, and the bolt still looks like it doesn't really need to be cleaned, and that is the moving parts and kind of what's important, because the piston up here has all kinds of room, and you're not really going to get a hiccup from the piston having carbon on it because there is so much room for it to play in there, whereas the bolt is obviously a tighter tolerance and needs to be cleaned and lubricated. So that's why you hear people talk about the piston system in the AKs being so much more reliable. Plus, they're typically overgassed. This is an Arsenal AK-74, and I wouldn't say it's overgassed. It chucks brass about 100 yards whenever you shoot it, so it might be, but it doesn't feel quite as bad as my AK-47. It's definitely overgassed, but again, I think that kind of contributes to the reliability of the AKs, because they do just pretty much chuck anything out of there and feed pretty reliably. Now, there are some downsides to the AKs, obviously, because of that huge piston that's in the front. They are front heavy. They're not as comfortable to shoot as an AR-15, not even close. But again, that does mitigate the recoil, and with the AK-74, this gun has like no recoil. You guys have seen me shoot this before, and it literally doesn't move. If anything, it kind of goes down because of the aggressive muzzle brake that's on the end of it there. but it doesn't have muzzle rise. It doesn't really move at all. It's just super easy to shoot and super comfortable to shoot. They're also not as modern as the M4s and the AR-15s that we have now, so the controls are a little outdated. Most people would agree that it's easier to operate an AR-15 and just more comfortable to operate, more intuitive controls, whereas the AKs are what they are. They've been the same for 75 years. That being said, they obviously did it right when they designed this gun, because they haven't changed much, and there's still militaries all over the world that choose the AK over everything else. They're so easy to operate that a kid could do it, and they do. All right, quick location change. We got some family that's out using the shooting range right now, but the AR-15, I would say from the people that I've talked to, about 90% prefer the AR over the AK, and there's a number of reasons why. Like I said, the controls, the way that you can customize them, they're much more user-friendly. Like, you can really deck these guns out to fit you perfectly and put exactly what you want on them, whereas the AK, it's kind of what you see is what you get. I mean, you can customize them to an extent, but not even close to the AR. The ARs are also lighter weight, I would say. This feels a lot more lighter weight than the AK-74, and because we're in the United States, or I assume most of us are in the United States, these are just much more available. The ammo is much more available, and there's 1,000 options to choose from with the AR-15. So the calibers are actually pretty similar. I'll go ahead and show them to you guys side by side here. The 5.56 should be on your left and the 5.45 on your right, and you can see that the same diameter, both about 22 caliber bullets. The 5.45 is a much longer bullet. The casing is shorter, but they serve the same purpose. Similar velocity, similar ballistics. Like I said, the 5.45 has been really impressive in my experience. I know a lot of people agree with that, but there's ammo out there for the 5.56 that would do the exact same thing. And I would say both of these rounds serve the same purpose. Now, as far as reliability with the AR-15, I would say a lot of the negatives that you hear are outdated and really old information, whereas the modern guns, in my experience, have been just as reliable as the AK. I have never had a single malfunction that wasn't induced by me in this BCM AR-15. And as you guys know, if you watch the channel, I just replaced the barrel after 20,000 rounds through this gun, and I'm not even kidding. It just does not malfunction, and that's with steel cased ammo. That's with, you know, everything I can put in it. The BCM just works like a top. So I could see in certain situations the AKs being more reliable. I could also see the ARs being more reliable in other situations. But as far as reliability goes, I would honestly put the AR right up there with the AK, especially when you're talking about well-made modern AR-15s. They just don't jam. Now, that being said, I've never let an AR-15 go as long as I have an AK without cleaning, because ARs do run dirtier, and it doesn't take long for the bolt and bolt carrier to just get covered in carbon. So I'll go ahead and show you guys how the AR operates. Again, I'm sure most of you already know this, but this is for people that don't. All right, so obviously the bolt carrier sits inside of the receiver, and whenever you fire a bullet, it goes down the barrel and sends gas through the gas port up into the gas tube and back into the bolt carrier group. So the bolt carrier group, you can see right here, has a piece on top that's called the gas key, and that is what comes in contact with the gas tube. So when it sends that gas back, it shoots it directly into the gas key, and that is what pushes the bolt back and cycles the gun. So I actually just cleaned this not too long ago, so it's not really dirty, but you can imagine all that carbon coming back and directly contacting the bolt and bolt carrier group, how much dirtier they would get and how quick that happens. It doesn't take long. I mean, you know, a magazine or two and the bolt carrier on an AR-15 is pretty much covered. So well-made AR-15s will continue to work without being cleaned. I've seen dozens of videos of guys putting thousands of rounds through well-made AR-15s and not cleaning them, and they do continue to work. But at least with me, it's always in the back of my mind, because I know that the bolt and bolt carrier is getting, you know, carbon all over it as soon as you start shooting. So with the AK, it's something I know I don't really have to worry about, but with the AR, they do get dirtier faster on the moving parts. And as people like to say, they poop where they eat. So obviously it's not an issue because our military continues to use these. People love them. This is the most popular rifle in the country, so they work really well. A lot of the reliability issues that you hear about when you compare it to the AK are either untrue or outdated from back in Vietnam when the guns weren't spec'd right, they weren't being treated right. They've corrected a lot of those problems, and the AR-15, at least in my experience, is about as reliable as any gun on the planet. So enough talking, let's go shoot them. All right, we're gonna start with the AR-15 since America always comes first. I have a bunch of targets down here. My brother-in-law set this up a few days ago. So we got some pumpkins, some steel. We're just gonna start taking stuff out. The spray paint can up there, I wonder if there's anything in it. Yep. Man, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier in the video. This AK-74, I would say probably recoils less. It really doesn't move much, but the recoil impulse of the AR-15, especially a mid-length AR-15 like this, I mean, it feels like the bolt carrier group is hitting a pillow at the back of the receiver. It's just so smooth and so soft. They're very different recoil impulses. The AKs have that long piston, so they kind of slam into the rear, but the AR, like I said, especially a mid-length AR, it's just butter. It's so soft shooting. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We got a bunch of these little mini pumpkins set up on the railroad ties. Small target at 40 or 50 yards, but let's see if we can take them out. I've only got a few rounds left in the magazine, so gotta make them count. I'm hitting them, but pumpkins, unfortunately, don't really give dramatic results when you shoot them. They just kind of pierce right through them. It's not like a watermelon. Let's hit a big pumpkin and check out the exit hole, then we'll compare it to the 5.45. Like I said, pumpkins don't really show too much damage, but let's see. This is just some regular old Winchester white box 5.56, so. Man, that's a loud round. I don't know why that's so much louder than the steel case Wolf. All right, so there's our little 22 caliber entrance hole on the front of that pumpkin. And looking at the backside here, that is our exit hole. So not too impressive, but not too shabby. Let's try the AK-74. All right, now we got the old communist war machine here. Usually in almost every video that I shoot this gun, I tell you guys that I like it a little more than the AR-15, but for the sake of America, I cannot give this rifle the victory today. It just ain't happening. So let's shoot some of these targets, then we'll take out a pumpkin. See if we can clean up the rest of the small pumpkins. Almost knocked the gong over. I don't know why, that seems like it's hitting harder than the 5.56 did. That's kind of strange. It's not even moving those little pumpkins. I see holes going in them, so it's poking right through them, but it's not moving them. There we go. Man, this thing is a little beast to shoot. I absolutely love this gun. All joking aside, I probably do prefer the AK-74 just a little bit more than the AR-15, but with all the factors included, it's hard to go against an AR-15, especially if you live in the United States, just because they're so available and it's the NATO round. I mean, we have endless options for guns and ammo, usually, with the AR-15, whereas these, you really can't find them, and the ammo's pretty much non-existent right now. So, but as far as just shooting the gun, excluding all the other factors like the ammo and the availability and stuff, I do love shooting this gun. It's absolutely awesome. Hopefully the slow-mo will pick it up, but I've mentioned this before, but the muzzle brake on this thing is so aggressive that it just drives the gun down when you shoot it. So instead of having muzzle rise, it actually has like a muzzle drop, and you kind of have to bring it up just a little bit to get back on target. But yeah, the AK-74 is an absolute blast to shoot. All right, let's do our pumpkin test with the 5.45. Now I have green box Wolf mil-spec 5.45 in the gun, and this is the ammo that I referred to earlier that is insanely impressive in ballistics gel. I've never kept one of these rounds in a gel block. It always tumbles out one way or the other. Most of the holes that I have in my table down there are from a 5.45 that exited out the bottom of a gel block and jacked up my table. So a violent little round, but once again, pumpkins don't really show us anything. So let's see. Okay, that was a much more dramatic result as far as the shrapnel that it sent up into the air. I don't know if the exit hole will be any more impressive. It could have hit something behind it, but I saw a bunch of pumpkin guts fly up into the air. With the AR-15, I didn't see that. All right, there's our entrance hole from the 5.45, pretty much identical to the 5.56. And then over on the back, we can see the exit hole. And once again, almost identical to the AR-15. So no difference in the pumpkin test. Man, you guys are getting some valuable information today. All right, guys, that is gonna do it for me today. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. For the sake of today's video, since it is America versus Russia, I cannot, in good faith, give the victory to that communist weapon of war. So the AR-15 is going to take the victory in today's comparison. As you guys know, I love AR-15s. I love AKs too, but the AR is going to get the W in today's video. I know that contradicts a lot of what I've said in the past, but I don't care. It's America versus Russia, and I'm giving the win to the American rifle. So, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know down in the comments. As always, hit that like button for me. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.